Introducing in this corner out of Hamamatsu, Japan, the 2024 MT10. An MSRP of $14,500, a wet weight of 467 pounds, making 157 horsepower and 83 foot-pounds of torque. Its challenger, also out of Hamamatsu, Japan, the 2024 MT09, listing at $10,600. 425 pounds with 119 horsepower and 70 foot-pounds of torque. And please forgive my silliness. You gotta have some fun when you're making these videos. So, yeah, you'd look at the specs and you think, hey, man, what's a big deal? 150 horsepower versus 120 horsepower. But when you look at the curves and what that looks like, you can see they're in just two different classes. And you read sometimes online, people talk about you really got to rev up the MT10 to access the power. And while there's a definite power boost above close to $7,000, and you really feel it come on at that 8,500 RPM, it's still, when you're jumping from the MT09 to the MT10, anything above 2,000 RPMs, it's very noticeable that the MT10 has a pretty big advantage, and we'd expect that, right? It's got a bigger motor, it's 4-cylinder versus 3-cylinder, and you guys know this, but I do got to talk about it, so. David from Flash by V Cycle Nut. So today what we're going to do is I got my friend Chris with me, and we're going to do back-to-back rides between my 22 MT10 and my 24 MT09. I did a comparison before between the 21 MT09 and the 22 MT10, and the changes that they made to the 24 MT09 really, for me so far, bring it a lot closer to the MT10 than I felt with my 21. We just did our first back-to-back ride. We're in the Pacific Northwest, so a lot of the roads that we have are not awesome. As far as like the surface of them, there are a lot of chip, what the hell do they call that? Chip paving or something like that. So that we get a lot of heavy equipment on them, so they get really undulating. They're not smooth, and the pavement gets hard to read. So, and this was about a 80 mile an hour road, third to fourth gear, trying to maintain our speed through it and not get too freaked out by the bumps and the undulations. So we just, Chris was on the MT10 first, and then we swapped over and he was on the MT09. So what'd you think, Chris?
Oh man, it boggles my mind how refined these bikes are, for sure. The MT10 is brutal, without a doubt. It is so incredibly brutal. Quarter throttle and oh crap, the MT09, it just feels so incredibly smooth comparably. The power isn't quite as insane as the MT10, but everything about it, I felt a lot more confident going into corners on the 09.
I did also. I really noticed when I jumped from the MT09 to the MT10, how narrow or how fat the MT10 felt between my legs. And yes, so when I was coming into corners and I wasn't quite sure where the road was going to go and the pavement was kind of sketchy, I actually felt more comfortable on the MT09, which on the 21, it was the complete opposite. So, yeah, again, that's why we're going to try several different roads today. But I completely agree with Chris's assessment. I was more comfortable on the MT09 than the MT10. The suspension theoretically is better on the MT10, right? And it was more controlled if I was braking harder. But I felt like the MT09 was a little more compliant. I didn't feel like it bounced me around as much. So interesting first comparison. Definitely a big step up from the old MT09. Harleys. Definitely a big step up from the old MT09 to the new MT09 on that type. I don't want to call it a goat path road because that's not fair, but on a tight, kind of gnarly, kind of, you know, not the
That was
best
a challenging
pavement.
road.
It is. My favorite bike on that road is the Hypermotard.
Oh,
The Hypermotard is a lot of fun on that road. But actually, that was a lot of fun. I had a really good time. So we're gonna head up, we're gonna head up to Mount Baker. Can't really see it, but it's over there. And this road's a little more open, not quite so undulating, and a little bit higher speed. So we'll see what we feel like after that. We just got back from running up to the top of Mount Baker and back, and let's flip this camera around and see what Chris thought of his impressions. What do you think, Chris?
Okay, so on the roads we were just on, they're a lot wider open, a lot higher speeds overall. I really feel like the MT10 came into its own with that. I do think it's a little bit more of a top-heavy bike, and when you're going into those faster corners, it just falls right into it. You feel like there's so much control and stability in that. The 09, the weight does feel a little bit lower down, and you are working a little bit more going into those corners, but still, both of them were just so phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's just, I feel like I had a little bit more fun on the 09.
All right, fair enough. For me, the 10 really shined on those roads. So where the power delivery was a little bit intimidating on the smaller, tighter roads, we got Bigfoot watching us, on these, you know, and we're not talking like, they were still below 100 mile an hour road, you know, 80 to run it up to 100, 80 to 100. I just really loved the MT10 in that situation. The pavement's a little better, gave me a little bit more confidence. And then, so anytime I have the confidence, for me, the MT10 really shines. When you're not quite as confident and you're trying to feel it out as you go, then I think the MT09 is a little less intimidating. And they're both just really good and fun to ride. Not as huge of a difference as I felt like I keep saying before with the 21, now that they've made the updates on the 24. Did feel like when I started getting to faster, like over 100, the 09 started to feel a little busier, where the 10 really the motor really comes into its own. And then I could really feel the better brakes on the 10 on some of the higher speed stuff, where you're trail braking into the corner and setting your speed. So both lots of fun, both great bikes. But for me, on the bigger, more open road, the MT10 really shined. So we ended up doing about 150 miles between the two bikes, swapped back and forth several times, and we stopped for a delicious beverage. Cheers, everybody. And so I'll give my take on them later, but since got Chris here, let's give his take on the bikes. So, Chris, if you had to decide between one or the other, time to put down your money.
You know, I was convinced until maybe the last hour of riding that it was just the 09 all day. But if I really had to choose, gun to my head, I think it would be the 10.
Why?
Actually, the 10, the more comfortable I got on it, the more rewarding riding it was. And I do feel that, yeah, the limit into which you can take that bike is just a bit higher than the 09. So I would go with the 10, but it would depend on where we're living, you know, like, or where I'm living. Like, in this kind of town, a smaller town, the roads aren't quite as wide. I think this is kind of the limit for how small the roads can be for the 10. But if I was in a city, it would be the 09 all day. It would just be, it's pointless having the 10 on when you can't open it up.
Yeah, it is definitely a little harder to access the power on the 10, right? Like,
Yeah.
But when you get to,
It's something else. That engine is so sweet.
yeah, it really is. It really is. And the power modes on both bikes are really, really awesome. If you have either bike, you really need to use the power modes.
Yeah.
Because obviously, both these bikes have full systems on them, are tuned by me. So, you know, yeah, good shit. All right, cool, man. I hope you had a good day.
Oh, it was great.
Awesome. So there you have it. There is the Flash by V Cycle Nut unofficial, official comparison shootout MT09 versus MT10. And my feelings on it, I echo Chris's a lot. Both are great fun bikes. They're both awesome to wheelie. I love the electronics on both bikes, though I do give the nod to controlling the new setup on the MT09 versus that stupid ass thumb wheel that's on the MT10. I'm guessing in 25 we'll get a slightly updated MT10 that will have the new electronics package on it with the little joystick on the left hand. It's a lot easier to use when you're riding, much better. As far as strong points of each bike, I'm going to go with the MT09. It's a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more seated up. It's definitely a little more confident inspiring. The mega motor on the MT10 can sometimes be a bit much when the road is tight. MT09 is more affordable, right? Cheaper to insure, cheaper to buy. It definitely steers a little easier. I think the belt felt like the bars are a little wider on it, and it just had a little lighter steering. And of course, it's easier to access full power because it just has a lot less power. It's got that great triple CP3 sound, and as we can see, the fuel mileage was quite a bit better on the MT09. For the MT10, it just has a higher ceiling. If you're taking it to a track or you ride really aggressively on fast roads, the MT10 is going to be your machine for sure. And the exotic sound of that CP4, I love the sound of the CP3, but then that CP4, just there's something about it. I watch MotoGP. I'm a huge MotoGP fan, and it feels like I'm on a Yamaha GP bike when I'm hearing it. And of course, the big power. It's got a ton of power. I mean, 155 doesn't sound like much in today's world, but on a naked bike, it really, for me, it's enough because it would be even harder to access it on a bigger horsepower bike. Saying that, I do get some comments from people talking about top speed on the MT09 or MT10, and you know, both these bikes will top out around 150, the MT10 around 160. But if top speed is your thing, neither one of these bikes are right for you. These bikes are for easy, accessible, comfortable power, lots of fun, wheelies, hooligan stuff, and just having a hoot. MT10 was definitely more, like I said, more composed at high speed. And yeah, it just seems that for me, the MT10 just has an X factor that the MT09 doesn't match. It's damn close, man. If you buy either one of these bikes, you will not be disappointed. They are both awesome, amazing, fun machines. But not surprisingly, it's, you know, what, $4,000 more or $3,500 more, whatever it is. And it's the flagship of Yamaha for naked bikes. MT10 is just a little better. If you lived in a place, like Chris said, in a city or a place with really tight roads, or just a place where, you know, you don't really you're not going to be able to access all of the MT10 power, then you would probably be happier on the MT09. So hopes that helps some people make a decision. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate y'all. Have a great day. And remember to hit that subscribe and like button for more motorcycle related content. Ride safe, my friends.